What would you trade to save the only person who ever truly loved you? I used to think the answer was anything. Then I learned it meant everything. The rain had been tapping against the bookstore windows for hours. It sounded like fingers, impatient, relentless, wanting in. I stood behind the counter, staring at the same sentence in the same book I'd read 5 times now. I wasn't reading. I was waiting. Waiting for a knock on the door. A phone call. A miracle. What I got was a man in a tailored coat stepping out of a black car, parking across the street, and walking toward me like he already owned everything. He didn't even knock. He simply pushed the door open and let the wind announce him. Ethan Blackwood. Tall, sharp, not handsome in a warm way. Handsome like winter. Beautiful from a distance and deadly up close. His presence made the shop feel suddenly too small. Or maybe I just felt smaller. You said you'd think about it, he said, skipping. Pleasantries. Well? I didn't answer him right away. I reached for the switch behind the counter and turned off the radio. Billie Holiday fell silent mid-note. Then I said, My father isn't just sick, he's disappearing. Every day, a little more, of him fades. And I'm the only one left to remember who he was. Ethan didn't blink. And without intervention, you'll lose this property. So will he. This store is all we have. It's also sitting on a historic district that I need full legal access to before my next phase of development. He paused. You marry me, Claire. I'll protect the estate. You and your father stay. On paper, the assets merge. No lawsuits. No delays. There it was. Again. The same offer he'd made in that conference room 10 days ago. But this time, it was personal, not business, not anymore. This time, he came to me. Why marriage? I asked. Why not just offer to buy it? Again? Because contracts are messy, wills get contested, board members get nervous. But if you're my wife, there are no legal loopholes. And emotions? I asked. Are liabilities. I should have told him to leave. Should have slammed the door and thrown the key across the street. But I didn't, because the hospital bill on my counter was past due. Because my father forgot who I was twice last week. Because the city had already started sending letters about zoning changes and redevelopment opportunities. And maybe because I wanted to prove to myself that I could make a deal and not fall apart. The wedding was scheduled 4 days later. I picked the courthouse over the cathedral, a simple ivory dress. No bouquet, no guests. He wore a suit so sharp, it might have sliced open the sky. The judge looked at us like we were strangers. We were. And yet, I signed my name with a steadier hand than I expected. Claire Bennett, or rather, Claire Bennett Blackwood, as of 11:08 a.m. The car ride back was silent. I looked out the window, watching Seattle blur past in shades of gray and glass. Ethan finally spoke when we pulled up to the tower where he lived, or, more accurately, ruled. I had my legal team draw up the boundaries of our agreement, he said, pulling a folder from the armrest. You'll find the usual clauses. Separate living spaces. Public appearances as needed. No romantic expectations, of course. Of course, I echoed. He handed it to me like it was a menu. My fingers touched his for half a second. His were cold. I wondered if he ever let anyone warm him. The elevator to the penthouse barely made a sound as it rose. The walls were glass. The furniture, minimalist, expensive, joyless. He gestured to the hallway. Your room is the second on the right. Mine is at the end. Try not to enter it without knocking. Wouldn't dream of it, I said. He turned away like he was done with me. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Why me? I asked. He paused. His jaw clenched before he replied. Because you were the only one stubborn enough not to sell. The only one with something to protect. Then he disappeared behind a door I wasn't supposed to open. That night, I lay on pristine sheets in a room that wasn't mine, in a house that wasn't home, married to a man who didn't believe in love. But I wasn't broken. I was watching, learning, waiting. Because what Ethan Blackwood didn't know was that when you try to turn a woman into a pawn, she just might learn to play the game better than you ever could. What would you do in Claire's place? Would you marry a man who sees you as leverage, if it meant saving your father's life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The penthouse was cathedral quiet, not the kind that soothes you, the kind that tells you to walk softer, speak less, and never touch anything unless you can afford to replace it. Marble floors, cold lighting, furniture arranged like exhibits, impressive, impersonal, untouchable. I stood at the window, watching the city from above. Seattle pulsed below in traffic and fog, alive in a way this place wasn't. Behind me, Ethan's voice was even, rehearsed. The contract is legally binding for 24 months. He laid out the terms like law, which, technically, they were. No physical intimacy, no emotional obligation, public appearances when required. My image stays intact. Your family remains protected. He didn't sit down. He didn't offer tea. He didn't ask if I understood. He assumed I would comply. Because I had no choice. I took the folder from him, read through the pages. Everything was written in language that sterilized reality. Marital cooperation. Residence clause. Non-interference in business matters. It was like being handed a script for a play I hadn't auditioned for. I'd like to keep running the bookstore, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Of course. It serves the image. You're the local girl who married the cold billionaire. Sentimental, but strategic. He meant it as a compliment. I heard it as a warning. I'll be there most days. He nodded. Fine. I'll have a driver assigned to you. Security, too. I don't need security. That's not up for debate. There it was, the first wall, already built. Later that evening, a housekeeper named Nina showed me to my quarters. That's what she called it. Like I was checking into a hotel, not a marriage. The room was stunning. Soft gray walls, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a view of the Puget Sound. And yet it felt hollow, like it had been decorated by someone who knew color theory, but nothing about comfort. I stood by the bed and stared at the sealed envelope resting on the pillow. Note, typed. Claire, I'll be away most of this week on business. Feel free to make yourself comfortable. E. That was it. No welcome. No, call me if you need anything. Just instructions like a tenant agreement. I left the note unopened and walked barefoot across the hardwood floor, absorbing how perfectly empty the place was. No family photos, no clutter, no life. That night, I slept with the lamp on. 3 days passed. I returned to the bookstore. The air smelled like paper and cinnamon. Familiar, grounding. The regulars came and went. I didn't tell them anything had changed, because honestly, nothing had. I wasn't a wife. I was a placeholder. Ethan hadn't called, not even a text. Only a brief email from his assistant. Mr. Blackwood will return Sunday evening. Please, be ready for a joint appearance at the Foundation Gala. I read it twice, then deleted it. Sunday arrived too fast. At 5 p.m., a black dress appeared on my bed, wrapped in tissue paper. Tailored, elegant, expensive, no note. But I knew it was from him. By 7 p.m., I was dressed, silent in the back seat of the car, next to a man who looked like he belonged on the cover of Forbes, and made me feel like I was tagging along as background noise. Smile, he said, as we stepped out into the lights. Mean it? I asked. His jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. The gala was a blur of handshakes, camera flashes, and glass clinking. Ethan spoke in low, efficient tones to board members and investors. He touched my back twice, brief, possessive, like staking a claim, not offering comfort. I smiled. I nodded. I stood 2 inches behind him, like the good prop I was supposed to be. But inside, something stirred. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was recognition. I saw the man I had married. Or rather, the shell of him. Flawless suit. Flawless lie. People didn't love Ethan Blackwood. They feared him, respected his power, admired his discipline. But no one, absolutely no one, looked at him like they knew him. And I wondered if he even remembered what it felt like to be known. Back at the penthouse, he poured whiskey into a crystal glass, loosened his tie, and stared out the window without saying a word. I stood in the doorway. "You didn't need to marry me to complete a business deal," I said. He glanced at me. "No, I needed to eliminate uncertainty. You don't like questions you can't control. I don't like liabilities." I stepped closer, barefoot on polished wood. "So what am I to you, Ethan?" His eyes met mine, still unreadable. "You're efficient." And that was the moment I realized something important. He wasn't cruel because he wanted to hurt me. He was cruel because he didn't know another way to be. That night, I didn't sleep with the lamp on. I left the room in darkness and told myself, he built this prison, but I'll decide who gets the key. Would you be able to live under someone else's rules, even if they saved your world in the process? Let me know in the comments. And do you think Ethan's coldness is protectiveness or punishment? The dress wasn't meant to be red. It was supposed to be navy, conservative, invisible, something that said I belong beside him without actually being noticed. But when I pulled it off the rack, I paused. The red one was satin, fitted, unapologetic, and for the first time since this whole farce began, I felt the flicker of something close to defiance. I chose the red. The Blackwood Foundation Gala was held in the rooftop ballroom of the Alden Hotel, one of those places that made everyone feel poor, even the rich. From the moment we arrived, Ethan was swarmed by board members, donors, and high society leeches in tuxedos. His hand found the small of my back in a gesture that read, "Stand here, look pleasant, say nothing." But the moment he saw me in the dress, he blinked. Just once. Quick. But I saw it, and so did everyone else. He didn't comment as we stepped into the spotlight, didn't compliment, didn't criticize. He just adjusted his cufflinks and gave a thin-lipped nod to the chairman of the board. "Mrs. Blackwood," the chairman said, offering his hand. "We've heard so much about you." "Good things, I hope," I replied, smiling politely. Behind the man's shoulder, I saw Ethan glance at me. A flicker of something. Tension? Approval? Contempt? I couldn't tell, but I knew it wasn't nothing. The room buzzed with wealth and thinly veiled competition. Laughter that didn't reach the eyes. Toasts that tasted like poison if you listened too closely. I excused myself from Ethan's side halfway through the evening and walked toward the bar. Not to drink. To breathe. The satin of the dress clung to my skin like a second declaration. I'm not playing quiet anymore. "Careful," a voice said beside me. "Red like that sends a message." I turned. The man standing next to me had silver at his temples and the easy charm of someone used to being the second most powerful man in any room. "Claire Blackwood," I introduced. He smiled. "Jackson Voss, Venture Tech, former rival of your husband." "Former." He shrugged. "He wins. I pivot." I raised my glass of water. "To reinvention." His eyes sparkled. "If Ethan has any sense, he'll watch you closely tonight." That's when I felt it. The temperature drop, the air tighten. Ethan had crossed the ballroom and now stood directly behind me. "Claire," he said smoothly, placing a hand, unnecessarily firm, on my lower back. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." I turned toward him, met his eyes. Cool blue. Stormy. I was just getting to know Mr. Voss. "Were you?" Ethan said, voice like ice. "I'm sure he has fascinating insights. About irrelevance." Jackson smirked. "And I'm sure you'll keep your trophy wife on a very short leash." Ethan didn't reply, but his grip on me tightened. Back in the car, the silence throbbed like a bruise. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. The city passed in smears of gold and rain-slick black outside the window. Then, as we pulled into the garage of the penthouse tower, he finally said, "What exactly were you trying to prove tonight?" I turned my head. Calm. Deliberate. That I'm not invisible. He laughed once, dry. "No one in that room could look away from you. That wasn't the dress. That was me." He looked at me then. Really looked. Like he was trying to see past the face, the red lips, the woman he married for convenience, like he was seeing the fire, and not sure if he wanted to put it out or watch it burn. In the elevator, we stood side by side, reflections staring back at us in polished steel. He spoke again, low, controlled. "Don't ever flirt with my enemies." I tilted my head. Then, "Don't leave me alone with them." He turned sharply, pinning me against the mirrored wall before I could blink. "You're my wife. In contract only," I whispered. His breath hitched. For a fraction of a second, the control slipped. His jaw clenched. His eyes dropped to my mouth, but he didn't kiss me. He stepped back, straightened his jacket, and walked out of the elevator like nothing had happened. In my room, I peeled off the red dress and hung it carefully in the back of the closet. Not hidden. Just waiting. Waiting for the next time I needed to remind him. I am not yours to forget. Jealousy. Possession. Control. Was Ethan protecting Claire? Or warning her? And if you were Claire, would you push again or pull back? The day after the gala, Ethan disappeared. No note, no message, just gone. I didn't ask. I didn't call. I went back to the bookstore and resumed my quiet rebellion, dusting shelves, restocking poetry, listening to Nina Simone on vinyl until the world blurred into soft jazz and survival. 3 days passed before I saw him again. When he walked through the door that evening, he looked like someone who'd just been in a fight. Not physically, but the kind that happens behind closed doors and boardroom glass. His tie was missing. His sleeves were rolled up. There was a shadow of stubble on his jaw and his eyes. God, his eyes looked like they hadn't slept. I was on the couch reading. I didn't get up. He stood in the entryway, staring at me like I was supposed to greet him, like we were normal. "I canceled the luncheon with the tech council," he said finally. I looked up. "Why?" "They moved the venue. Somewhere public. Too many eyes." I returned to my book. "Thought you liked eyes on you." "I don't like them on you." I closed the book, slow and deliberate. "You're not making sense." He walked into the room, not too close, not too far. Just enough to bring tension with him. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" he asked. "Remind me. What am I doing?" "Making me look." He moved like a storm held barely in check. "I brought you here to solve a problem, Claire, not to become one." My heart should have pounded. My hands should have trembled. They didn't. I stood, stepped past him, and headed for the kitchen. "I made tea," I said over my shoulder. "There's enough for 2. Or you can drink another glass of your imported scotch and pretend I'm not here." He followed. Not like a man chasing something. Like a man hunting it. I poured tea without looking at him. "Why does it bother you?" I asked. "What?" "When people talk to me." I didn't say it bothers me. "Your silence does." He didn't respond. I slid a cup across the counter toward him. He took it, slowly, like it might bite. We sat across from each other in that designer kitchen, 2 people dressed in silence, surrounded by marble and expensive emptiness. "I used to think cold men were the safest," I said finally, "that you couldn't get hurt if the other person didn't care." He studied me. "And now?" "Now I think cold men burn worst of all." That night, I passed his office to find the door ajar. I paused. Inside, Ethan sat at his desk, tie now gone entirely, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His sleeves were pushed back to reveal forearms tense from whatever he'd just slammed into the desk. He didn't see me at first. He was staring at a picture frame face down beside his laptop. I knocked once, lightly. He looked up, startled. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't answer, just motioned me in with a nod, like that counted as something. I stepped inside and stood across from him. "What happened to the photo?" I asked. He didn't look at it. "Old life," he said. "Old love?" He met my eyes, and for the first time since we met, he didn't look like a man who had the upper hand. He looked haunted. "She married my best friend a month after we ended our engagement," he said. I didn't flinch. "Ouch," he nodded. "Yeah." "She loved him more?" "She loved what I gave her. He gave her more." "Like what?" Ethan looked away. "Time, emotion, chaos." I tilted my head. "And you?" He laughed once, bitter. "I gave her a kingdom. She wanted fire." I walked over to the desk and picked up the photo. It was of Ethan, younger, still sharp but less worn. The woman beside him was beautiful, yes, but her smile was already half turned away from him. I put it face down again. "You could give fire, you know," I said. He blinked. "What?" "You just don't want to get burned." We stood there in silence, not empty this time, but full of the words he wouldn't say. The spaces I wouldn't fill in. The war neither of us had admitted we were fighting. Then I turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind me. Let him decide what to do with that. Later that night, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured. A knock at my door. I didn't move. Another knock. Quieter. Then, just his voice. "I don't know how to let you in without losing pieces of myself." I closed my eyes. Didn't answer. Didn't open. But I left the door, unlocked. Is Ethan broken? Or just scared? Do you think Claire should keep protecting herself? Or begin pulling down her walls? What would you do if someone confessed they're afraid of loving you? The storm didn't start in the sky. It started in his silence. It was there that morning, at breakfast, where he didn't touch his coffee, didn't touch his phone, didn't touch me with so much as a glance. It followed us to the gala luncheon, where I stood beside him like a museum piece, while he delivered a speech that used the word strategy 7 times and partnership 4, none of which referred to me. It simmered through the drive, home. The silence, the weight, the unfinished war between us. But it didn't explode until I said 5 words. "I'm leaving for a while." We were in the hallway. I had my coat on, bag slung over my shoulder. He turned. Slowly. His voice was low, dangerous. "What does that mean?" "It means I need air. I need space. I need a day or two to what? Punish me? Walk away from something you agreed to?" "Walk away from what, Ethan?" I snapped. "A contract? A cage? You haven't spoken to me like a human being in days." He stepped forward. "And what do you want me to say, Claire? That I think about you when I'm not supposed to? That every time you walk into a room I have to pretend not to notice the way you look, the way you smell, the way you..." He stopped himself. Too late. The words were already fire in the air. I dropped my bag. Took a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then stopped pretending. Lightning cracked somewhere above us. Thunder rolled. The rain was waiting outside the door when I walked out. Cold. Relentless. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't care. I made it 10 steps down the front steps before I heard his voice. "Claire." I stopped. Didn't turn. Didn't move. Then footsteps. Fast. Angry. He grabbed my arm, not rough, but firm. I turned, soaked to the skin, hair sticking to my face, eyes blazing. "Let me go." "No." You can't control me, Ethan. I'm not trying to control you, he said, breathing hard. I'm trying to understand why the hell you matter so goddamn much. And that was it. The crack in the ice, the fire in the rain. Kissed me. Hard, like a man possessed. Like he'd been starving for weeks and finally found water. His hands gripped my waist, my back, my neck, desperate and certain and shaking all at once. And I kissed him back, with everything I'd held in, with the fury, the longing, the bruised pride and hidden ache. We stumbled back inside, dripping wet, clothes clinging to skin. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His mouth found mine again before the door even shut behind us. In the hallway, he lifted me, back against the wall, mouth on my throat. Say stop, he growled. No. He carried me to his room, the one I wasn't supposed to enter, and laid me down on a bed that smelled like cedar wood and night. His hands were rough, impatient. He tore my blouse open like he couldn't bear another second of restraint. Buttons flew, breath tangled, control shattered. I unbuckled his belt, fingers trembling, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from power, from finally making the man who never bent. Break. He pressed his forehead to mine, breathing hard. I'm not gentle. I'm not asking you to be. And then he was inside me, hot, deep, demanding. My name left his lips like a confession. Claire. And I gasped his like it was the only truth I knew. He moved with purpose. Not choreographed, not polite, but real. Hands in my hair, lips on my collarbone, bodies colliding like war and worship. It wasn't soft, it wasn't sweet. It was mine, and it was his, and it was us. For the first time, without any script. Afterward, we lay tangled in the wreckage of ourselves. The room was still. His chest rose and fell beneath my cheek. He didn't say anything. He just held me, like he was afraid I'd evaporate. And maybe I was afraid of that too. Finally he spoke. Just 3 words. Quiet, honest, raw. You scare me. I pulled the blanket higher, closed my eyes. Good. That wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something real. Do you think this kind of intensity is dangerous? Or necessary? Could you fall for someone like Ethan? After a night like that? The morning after felt like the first real one since the wedding. The rain had stopped. The city, freshly rinsed, blinked under soft light, and Ethan Blackwood was still in my bed. Or rather, I was in his. His arm lay across my stomach, heavy, grounding. His face, usually carved in ice, had softened in sleep. Lines less sharp, mouth slightly parted, like he'd forgotten to wear the mask. For a moment, I let myself believe that everything had changed, that we had burned down the walls and built something new in the ashes. But fantasies, like fire, flicker fast. And then, his phone rang. He woke with a sharp inhale. The name on the screen flashed once before he silenced it. Board meeting, he muttered. I'm late. He was already pulling on a shirt, buttoning it with mechanical speed. I sat up, clutching the sheet. Ethan, we'll talk later. Will we? He paused, looked at me. Yes, we will. But his voice was already shifting, sliding back into steel, and the man I met last night began retreating into the man I married. He was gone before the coffee finished brewing. By noon, the world knew. The news broke online first. Ethan Blackwood walks out of $320 million acquisition meeting. For a woman? Then came the video. Grainy security footage leaked from the hotel. Ethan exiting the boardroom mid-negotiation, phone in hand, jaw tight. Headlines exploded. Blackwood cracks under. Pressure. CEO derailed by mystery bride. Love interest or liability. And just like that, I became a scandal. Not a person. Not a wife. A headline. By the afternoon, reporters were outside the bookstore. By evening, my name was trending. And by night, I was hiding. In the stockroom, heart pounding as the front door jangled again and again. Nina tried to turn them away, but it was no use. The world wanted a villain. Or a victim. And they hadn't decided which I was yet. The door creaked open. Claire? Ethan. He looked wrecked. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled, eyes bloodshot from more than just stress. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I waited. You should have told me, I said. About what? That you were going to walk out. That you were willing to throw your reputation into a fire. I didn't plan it, he said quietly. He stopped. Tried again. They said something about you. One of them. A joke. About contracts. About using you to secure the property and the board. I laughed at first. Then I saw your face. You weren't even there. I remembered your face. He stepped closer. I remembered the way you looked at me that night. After. Like I was more than a deal. And now you've lost that deal. Yes. Silence. No excuses. No justifications. Just, yes. I stood, slowly. Do you regret it? Didn't look away. I regret not walking out sooner. That night, I trended for the wrong reasons. Gold digger wife, Blackwood breakdown, contract Claire. They called me a manipulator, an opportunist, a distraction. And Ethan? He didn't release a statement, didn't deny it, didn't blame me. Instead, he showed up to a press conference the next morning and said one sentence. Every decision I've made this year, including who I married, was mine. And mine alone. And then he walked off stage. Back at the penthouse, I found him on the balcony, staring at the skyline like it owed him something. I joined him. We didn't speak. Not for a long time. Then, I've never had anyone ruin me this quietly, he said. You ruined yourself. I just didn't stop you. Exactly. He turned to me. Tired. Vulnerable. Stripped of the empire. They'll pull out, Claire. The board. The investors. They don't like risk. Am I the risk? No. Me loving you is. My breath caught. He'd never said it before. Not directly. Not without walls. You what? I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between our silence and your smart mouth and that damn red dress, I stopped seeing you as leverage, and started seeing me as what? As the one thing I can't negotiate. I stepped back. Afraid of how much I wanted to believe him. Afraid of what came next. What happens now? Now, you get to choose. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside, divorce papers, signed on his end. No pressure, no rules, no timeline. You're really giving me the choice? You always had it, Claire. I was just too afraid to admit it. He left the envelope on the table and walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't ask for an answer. Just left the room like a man who'd finally understood that love isn't control. It's surrender. And now? Now it was my turn to decide. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of power. Do you believe Ethan truly changed? Or is he just afraid of losing? Should Claire forgive him now that he's finally let go of control? What would you do if the power was finally yours? The envelope sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days, untouched, unopened. I walked past it, cleaned around it, ate breakfast beside it. It waited silently, like a question with no deadline. Inside were Ethan's signatures, on every page, on every line that severed us. And yet, he hadn't walked away from me. He'd walked away from control, from the version of himself that always won. Now it was my turn. I stayed at the bookstore longer those 2 days. I needed time, not because I didn't know what I felt, but because I needed to trust that what I felt wasn't just reaction, or need, or proximity. He had ruined himself, yes, but he hadn't done it for applause. He'd done it for me, and that meant something. But what it meant for us, I still didn't know. Nina brought me tea on the second night. She didn't ask about the papers, or Ethan, or the headlines that had finally started to fade. Instead, she said something simple. Power isn't just about making choices, Miss Claire. It's about living with the ones you don't undo. Then she walked out, and I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I left the penthouse, not in anger, not in secrecy, just in silence. I returned to my childhood home, what was left of it, now renovated into a memory, the bookstore below, the apartment above. I stood in the doorway of the second floor for a long time, breathing in dust and echoes, and I wrote him a letter. Ethan, you asked what happens now. You gave me the choice. I'm taking it. I'm choosing space. Not to punish you, but to remember who I am outside of you. For so long, I've been reacting, surviving, burning quietly in corners no one looked at. But I want to be seen, not just noticed. And if what we have is real, it will survive this pause. If you come back to me, come not as a man who needs to fix something. Come as a man who finally sees what was never broken. Claire. I left the letter. On his desk, no envelope. No signature, just truth. A week passed, then two. The media moved on. A newer scandal, a fresher fall. Blackwood Ventures lost a few deals, gained some sympathy, and Ethan, according to a brief email from Nina, hadn't left the penthouse. He was still there, still waiting, not chasing, not demanding, just holding space. It was the most loving thing he'd ever done. On the 15th day, I found myself unlocking the front door of the Velvet Spine, with a latte in one hand, and absolutely no plan in the other. That's when I saw him. Not in a suit, not in armor, just jeans, a soft gray sweater. His hair slightly messy, like he'd run a hand through it too many times. He stood by the poetry section, staring at a worn copy of Neruda's 20 love poems and a song of despair. He didn't see me at first. When he finally did, he blinked like I was something imagined. You came back, I said. You left the door open. I always do. He stepped forward, book still in hand. I don't have a plan or a pitch. Good. I just miss you, in every room, in every hour. He looked at me. Claire, I don't need you to be quiet, or small, or convenient. Held the book out to me. I need you to be poetry, loud, unruly, untranslatable. My heart didn't race. It steadied. Because this time, he wasn't trying to own me. He was offering to join me. I took the book from his hands, flipped to the final page, tore it out. I found a pen on the counter, scribbled a single line across the back. Then I handed it to him. He read it once. Then again. Then he smiled. Not the cold, practiced one. The real one. The one I hadn't seen until now. Does this mean yes? He asked. Read it again. He did. Aloud. You never owned me. But now, I choose to be yours. He stepped forward. Hands gentle now. Not claiming, inviting. He kissed me like a man who'd lost a war, and finally learned peace. That night, we sat on the bookstore floor, legs tangled between first editions and late sunlight. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the future. We just were two people, two stories, one ending, rewritten. Do you believe real love gives space or holds tight? Did Claire do the right thing by walking away first? and letting Ethan choose. Her again? Have you ever been brave enough to pause love, to protect yourself? There was no ceremony, no press release, no new contract to sign. Just a quiet Saturday morning, 2 cups of coffee, and the sound of Ethan's heartbeat beneath my cheek as we sat on the floor of the bookstore, watching the dust glow in the early light. He'd stayed that night. Not as a man crashing into my world, but as a man asking if there was space in it for him. And there was. Not because I needed him, but because I wanted him. That's the difference between ownership and love. Want is free. A week later, we moved the rest of my things out of the penthouse. I kept 3 books, a blanket, 1 photograph. Everything else stayed behind, including the silence that once held us hostage. Ethan didn't return to Blackwood Ventures. Not really. He stepped down from the CEO seat quietly, offered it to his second-in-command, and shifted his focus to something new. He opened a foundation for small, family-run bookstores in struggling neighborhoods. He called it the Claire Project. I didn't ask him to. He didn't announce it. But I found the paperwork on the counter one morning. Signed, notarized, and already in motion. There was a note clipped to the top. You reminded me that building something real takes time. This time, I want to build it with you. E. Our marriage never had a restart button. There were no second vows. No new wedding rings. We didn't need them. What we had now wasn't built on terms and timelines. It was built on slow mornings. On late-night walks where he held my hand like he never wanted to let go. On dinners where we cooked badly and laughed anyway. On arguments that didn't end in doors slamming, but in whispered apologies and shared blankets. We didn't fix each other. We just stopped trying to break ourselves. People still whispered. Some said I trapped him. Others said he fell for the long con. But most stopped talking eventually, because they couldn't argue with what they saw. Ethan, wiping down bookstore windows on a Sunday morning. Ethan, pressing a kiss to my temple before unlocking the shop. Ethan, carrying boxes of used poetry donations like they were rare treasure. One evening, I caught him alone in the back of the shop, reorganizing a stack of translated novels. He didn't notice I was watching. His brow furrowed in focus. His hands careful, reverent, the same hands that once clutched power like a weapon now treated paper, like it might fall apart if touched too hard. That's when I knew. He had stopped fighting the world and started loving it, 1 page at a time. Later, that night, curled together on the couch, I turned to him. You know, you never really said the words. He looked at me. Which words? The ones people say when they mean it. I've said a lot of things to you, but not those. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat up, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a folded page. Worn. Familiar. The same one I'd torn from Naruto weeks ago. You wrote this, he said, but you never read it aloud. He handed it to me. I unfolded it, smiled. You never owned me. But now, I choose to be yours. I met his eyes. Still true? Every day, I said. Leaned in, brushed his lips against mine, then whispered, I love you. Not as a question, not as a test, as a promise. I kissed him back. I know, I love you too. But don't expect this to be easy. I don't want easy, he said. What do you want? He smiled. I want complicated, messy, honest. I want the bookstore when it rains. I want you in my arms when nothing makes sense. I want everything we weren't supposed to have. And he meant it. Not like a man desperate to keep me, but like a man finally unafraid to belong to someone else. The bookstore stayed open. We added a poetry corner. We adopted a rescue dog that hated rain, but loved Ethan. And every night, when the lights dimmed and the world quieted, we fell asleep knowing one thing. Not every love story starts with love. Some start with fear, with contracts, with walls so high they scrape the sky. But when they fall, when you choose someone not because you have to, not because you're expected to, but because you've seen every broken piece of them and still say yes, that's when the love lasts. Not forever by accident, but forever on purpose. Real love doesn't take prisoners. It waits. It listens. It offers a key, then waits for you to open the door. So what about you? Would you choose someone who once tried to own you, if they finally learned to set you free? Because love isn't just what we feel, it's what we choose. You might be wondering how a woman like Claire ended up in a marriage that began as a contract, and how a man like Ethan, who built empires with iron and silence, learned to open his chest and let someone live inside it. The truth is, this story isn't just fiction, it's reflection. We all know people like Claire. Maybe we are Claire. Someone who grew up being the strong one, the quiet one, the hold-it-all-together type. The daughter who sacrifices, the partner who adapts, the woman who's told she's enough, only when she's convenient. And we've met Ethans too. Maybe we've even dated them. Men who confuse control with safety, who love in logic, but fear in silence, who don't know how to ask for connection, without framing it as a deal. But here's the thing. Every love story has a contract. Sometimes it's spoken, sometimes it's written in glances, sometimes it's made of expectations we never agreed to, but still live under. You do this. I'll do that. You stay quiet. I'll stay in control. You don't leave. I won't have to change. But real love renegotiates. Over time. With growth. With honesty, what The Contract Bride shows us isn't just a fantasy romance between a bookstore girl and a billionaire. It's a mirror. It asks, what happens when we stop being what others need and become who we truly are? What if love doesn't save us, but frees us to save ourselves? You are not responsible for keeping someone else's armor on, and no one is allowed to love you only on their terms. In a healthy relationship, you don't earn freedom through suffering. You are free first. Then you choose to stay, not because you have to, but because you want to. Just like Claire did. You might not marry a billionaire, but maybe you've stayed in a relationship that felt like a contract. Maybe you've silenced your needs because someone else provided. Maybe you've been scared to ask for more. Love, touch, truth, because you didn't want to seem difficult. And maybe, just maybe, you've waited for someone to choose you without needing to control you first. That's not fantasy. That's human. Claire walked away first, not to break him, but to find herself. And because she did, Ethan had the chance to love her freely, not fearfully. And when he did, they began again, this time, with no contracts left on the table. Have you ever stayed in a love that started with imbalance? Have you ever feared leaving? Not because you didn't want to, but because you didn't know who you'd be without it. What would it look like if your next relationship was based on choice, not need? You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You just need to be honest enough to ask for more, like Claire, and strong enough to give it. Like Ethan, in the end, the best kind of love doesn't trap you. It sees you and lets you walk toward it on your own.